Well, wasn't that something? Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you so much for your ministry to this congregation, to your people. Good morning. I'm Reverend Krista Taves. I'm Eliot's Minister of Congregational Life, and I'm so pleased to be with you here and to welcome all of you to our worship this morning. Whether you're here on site or watching from home, we are united as one community, more together than alone. This is a liberal religious community of spiritual seekers. We welcome you all in the fullness of your age, race, ethnicity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and religious background. Our faith is not lived in creeds, but in deeds. Not in the hereafter, but in the here and now. And our core values are freedom, reason, respect, and love. If you're visiting for the first time, a very, very special welcome to you. There's so many other things you could have been doing this morning, and you chose to come here. I hope you feel warmly welcomed, that today's message speaks to you, and that we will see you again. If you're here in person, please fill out the guest card you received on the way in so we can stay in touch with you. If you didn't get one, they're at both entrances. And if you're visiting online, let us know you're here. Email welcome@eliotchapel.org so that we can personally welcome you as well. We want to talk very briefly about our COVID policy. We are following the CDC guidelines, which means that masking is optional when the county is at medium or low risk, and we are at medium risk. So masks are optional at this time. We still ask that everyone be up to date on their vaccinations, and we do also want to be mindful that we are now moving into cooler weather, and we don't want to contribute to a surge. So let's be mindful of this in the choices that we make about masking. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice to symbolize that we are entering sacred space and that we are preparing our hearts and minds for the blessing of beloved community that happens whenever we gather and however we gather. So this morning, we light this chalice for the web of life which sustains us, for the sacred circle of life in which we have our being, for the earth, the sky above and below, and for our Mother Earth, and for the mystery. Thank you, Nicholas Walsh, for lighting our chalice. And now I invite you to rise in the ways that you do for our opening hymn, There Is More Love Somewhere, number 95.
Amen.
Unitarian Universalism is a faith of the covenant. We don't have a single belief about the hereafter or a transcendent power. What unifies us are the sacred promises that we make to each other, that we know will break because that's what humans do, but our covenant is also that we keep coming back to the table and trying again. So today and every Sunday, we read our covenant together to remind us of what holds us together as one. So please join me in reading our covenant. It is printed in your order of service. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be. To listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart. To speak responsibly and respectfully. To find ways to improve our church for all members and friends. Our story today is called The Brave Little Parrot. It's a Jataka tale from India, written by Rafe Martin. This version was written by Rafe Martin. Once, long ago, the Buddha was born as a little parrot. And one day a storm broke upon her house. Lightning flashed, thunder crashed, and a dead tree, struck by lightning, burst into flames. Sparks leapt on the wind, and soon the whole forest was ablaze. Terrified animals ran in all directions, seeking safety from the fire and the smoke. "Fire, fire," cried the little parrot. "Run, run to the river." And flapping her wings, she flung herself out into the fury of the storm, and rising higher, flew towards the safety of the river. But as she flew, she could see that many animals were trapped, surrounded by the flames below, with no chance of escape. And suddenly a desperate idea came to her, a way to save them. She darted to the river, dipped herself in the water, and flew back over the now raging fire. The heat rising up from the burning forest was like the heat of an oven. The thick smoke made breathing almost impossible, and a wall of flames shot up now on one side, now on the other, and crackling flames leapt and danced before her. Twisting and turning through the mad maze of fire, the little parrot flew bravely on. And at last, over the center of the forest, she shook her wings and released the few drops of water that still clung to her feathers. Tiny drops tumbled like jewels down into the heat of the blaze and vanished with a sss. Then the little parrot once more flew back through the flames and smoke to the river, dipped herself in cool water, and flew back again over the forest. Back and forth she flew time and time again, from the river to the forest, from the burning forest to the river. Her feathers were charred, her feet were scorched, her lungs ached. Her eyes, stung by smoke, burned as red as coals. Her mind spun as dizzily as the spinning sparks. But still, the little parrot kept on. At this time, some of the devas, gods of a happy realm, were floating high overhead in their cloud palaces of ivory and gold. And they happened to look down, and they saw the little parrot flying back and forth through the flames. They pointed at her with their perfect hands, and between mouthfuls of honeyed foods, they exclaimed, "Look at that foolish bird. She's trying to put out a raging force with a few sprinkles of water. How ridiculous! How absurd!" And they laughed at her. But one of those gods did not laugh. Strangely moved, he changed himself into a golden eagle and flew down, down, down to the little parrot's fiery path. The little parrot was just nearing the flames again when the great eagle with eyes like molten gold appeared at her side. "Go back, little bird," said the eagle in a solemn and majestic voice. "Your task is hopeless. A few drops of water can't put out a forest fire. Cease now and save yourself before it's too late." But the little parrot only continued to fly on through the smoke and flames. She could hear the great eagle flying above her as the heat grew fiercer, calling out, "Stop! Stop! Save yourself!" "I don't need a great shining eagle," coughed the little bird, "to give me advice like that. My own mother, dear bird, might have told me such things long ago. Advice. I don't need advice. I need someone to help me." And the God who was that great eagle, seeing the little parrot flying through the flames, suddenly thought of his own privileged kind. He could see them floating high above. Yes, there they were, the carefree gods, still laughing and talking, while many animals cried out in pain and fear from the flames below. Seeing that, he grew ashamed, and a single desire kindled in his heart. God though he was going to be just like that brave little parrot. "I will help," he exclaimed, and flushed with these new feelings, he began to weep. Stream after stream of sparkling tears poured from his eyes. Wave after wave, they washed down like cooling rain upon the fire, upon the forest, upon the animals, and upon the little parrot herself. The eagle's tears dripped from burned branches and soaked into the scorched earth. Where those trees glistened, new life pushed quickly forth. Shoots, stems, and leaves, buds unfurled, and blossoms opened. Green grass pushed up from among the still glowing cinders. All the animals looked at one another in amazement, washed by those tears. They were whole and well. Not one had been harmed. Up above in the clear blue sky, they could see their little friend, the parrot, looping and soaring in delight. When hope was gone, somehow she had saved them. "Hooray," they cried. "Hooray for the brave little parrot and this sudden, miraculous rain." And that is the end of our story. Let's sing our children out to their classes. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. There are many ways that we pray and meditate in Unitarian Universalism. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation as you are willing and able. Spirit of life, Spirit of the fall, when that which has glimmered and filled our lives is having its last days and falling to the earth from which it came. In this time of transition to winter, may we recognize and abandon the familiar attitudes and practices that do not serve the whole. We are who we are, and we have the opportunity to be who we want to be and create a new inheritance for the future. May our thoughts, words, and actions in our daily lives assist in dismantling paradigms of oppression and suffering. May our tears quench the flames. May we give thanks for our individual place in time and space, to our families and our relationships that touch and change us. May we give thanks to the wise teachers who help us remember how to be. and the chance to make it so. Underneath and within these stories and histories is our humanity. Being human means we are of this earth. We are these waters. We are fire and atmosphere. We are the sun and the moon and the stars. We are all that we see, and the wisdom is revealed by looking in between. Let us have a minute of silence for the prayers of our hearts. Let us name those that we would hold in prayer. Let the prayers in our hearts and the names spoken here be held in the crucible of this beloved community, and may we know that we are not alone. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to remain seated for our meditative hymn. Number 317, We Are Not Our Own. It is our custom to give away half of our offering every week to an organization in the community that manifests our core convictions and values. This month, we're sharing our offering with a Red Circle, which exists to promote community betterment in North St. Louis County through a racial equity lens. Their current concerns are the lack of sustainable jobs, education disparities, limited healthy food access, financial pressures, low voter participation, and exposure to the arts. A red circle approaches these issues in a holistic, collaborative way, working with residents, elected officials, community leaders, volunteers, and more. Let us be a generous people. Let us love our neighbors. Will the greeters please come forward for the offertory? Will the ushers please come forward? Please join me in dedicating this offering with the words printed in your order of service. To the work of the Church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you. Our reading this morning is by a dear friend of mine, Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. It's called, I Will Love You by Being. I will love you by being brave. I will walk directly into the eye of every storm, push back against the wind that tries to stop my forward motion, and bear the bruises from hailstones that mark my skin. I will love you by being strong. I will lift the weight of 1,000 broken hearts, pull the whole world behind me on a single chain, and break my own shell to grow tender and new. I will love you by being wise. I will close my mouth, open my eyes, my ears, my heart, push aside the obvious, the easy, the darling, and the dead, and begin again and again to know and not know everything about love. I will love you by being weak. I will reveal the tender and the vulnerable, hold myself open, pull off the armor, the exoskeleton layer by layer, and build nothing in its place. I will love you by being. I will breathe in and out and cherish the beating of my own heart, push back against anything that would suffocate my flame, burn away despair, leave room for more love. I will love you by being weak. I will love you by being wise. I will love you by being strong. I will love you by being brave. I will love you by being. Thank you. Thank you, choir. That was beautiful. Today's message is about what happens when we think we know the world around us. Then we realize we really don't know what's going on around us. And the gap between what we thought was true and what is really true asks for us to love ourselves into courageousness as we reshape who we are and reconsider our place in the order of things. When I first moved to St. Louis in 2005, I was entranced by the beauty of the woods. I called home and said, "Mom, the woods here are frothy. The trees are so tall and there's this shimmery bush that fills the forest floor. It is so beautiful." When the bushes erupted into red berries in the fall and fragrant white blossoms in the spring, the love affair was complete. 2 years later, my partner and I were ready to buy our home. And the woods were a big factor. And we found this little fixer-upper down by the Merrimack River, not in the floodplain, if you're wondering. And at the back of our property was this massive sumac. Where I grew up, sumac is everywhere. Clearly, I was home. But something we didn't have there was privacy. We live on an S-curve, and we were always in view of the passing traffic. And we're outdoor people, so this was just not going to fly. And we noticed that there were shoots of this bush springing up around our property line. "Let's just leave it," we said. "Just a few years, and we'll have this thick wall of green sheltering us from the road." And that is exactly what happened. Some of you know what I'm talking about here, the bush I'm talking about, right? So 10 years later, we decided to start native gardening. We were talked into it by my sister-in-law, who is a University of Missouri Extension officer. Native gardening means that you plant only native shrubs, trees, and plants of the area that you live in. The goal of native gardening is to restore habitat, to support biodiversity, which grows the pollinator population and supports all kinds of wildlife. And the reason so many folks are doing this is because our pollinator population is in deep, deep trouble. And there's many of us trying to do everything we can to restore it because our whole ecosystem depends on them. The first step is getting rid of the non-natives on your plot of land, especially the toxic ones that are aggressive and push out the native plants. No problem, right? No, we didn't have any of that. How naive we were. We learned that this bush we loved, that we had nurtured and surrounded 2 sides of our property with, is not just non-native, but it is the most aggressive, invasive species in our area. Bush honeysuckle basically suffocates what would normally be the understory of the forest floor, like spicebush and dogwoods and redbuds. It chokes them all out. And we were like, "Oh my God, what have we done?" Did you know that bush honeysuckle berries provide almost no nutrition to the birds that eat it? It's all sugar. Its berries are to birds like drinking Coke is great for running a marathon. Right? You get that rush of energy and then you crash. For overwintering birds who need rich seeds and berries, bush honeysuckle berries leave them wasted and weak. Some do not survive the winter. Birds that feed on the berries before they cross the Gulf of Mexico to migrate south for the winter often don't make it because they don't have the energy. They get over the water and then they crash. It's one of the reasons the bird population is decreasing and doesn't have much diversity. Who knew? All the beauty that I had been bragging about to my family, that thick, imposing hedge that I had been so proud of, wasn't so beautiful. I felt different on my morning hikes once I knew that the woods I walked through were being smothered by bush honeysuckle. I understood why the sumac at the back of our property, the one I fell in love with, had died. What I thought I had the same, I thought I had been seeing woods that shimmered with life was in fact woods that were becoming a food desert. The term food desert is used by native plants to identify an area that may look stunningly beautiful but has little to no benefit to any wildlife. That's a food desert. I would bet that most of us have this kind of experience in some way. Yours probably wasn't focused on a bush, but you think you know what's going on, right? You think you know what you're seeing right in front of you, and then you learn that it's not so. This could be a family secret, or a simmering conflict, or something way bigger, like our corrupt political system, or the climate crisis, or the power of fascism and racism in this country, the erosion of voting rights. I go on, right? I mean, where are there not food deserts around us? But once you're wide awake, there it is. And it takes courage to approach the truth that you are face to face with a food desert, and in fact, you're hungry and you're irritable, just like birds feeding on bush honeysuckle berries. So what do you do then? What happens to your mind, to your heart, to your spirit, to your body? This month, we've been talking about pathways to courage. We started the month with Reverend Doug and I sharing personal stories of our pathways to courage. And last week, Reverend Doug focused on our congregation's pathway to courage as we embrace this transition time between lead ministers. The interim journey involves looking at what we think we understand and know about ourselves and this congregation in new ways. And this means loving ourselves into courage because it is our nature. It is human nature to get attached to the things that are comfortable to us. They become part of our identity. But in truth, some of the things that we cling to have become food deserts. They're no longer feeding us. We start getting hungry and irritable, losing energy. But it's our nature to resist because, who are we without these things that are now part of our identity? And often we look for people to scapegoat when it's really the system that we created, that we are all part of, that is making us hungry and irritable. The journeys we are on ask us to risk being wide awake. And this takes a lot of courage, whatever your place in this congregation, member, friend, leader, staff, minister. We all have a stake in what we have here in this beloved community. We are being called to live in a courageous way, to live courageous love, because to live wide awake can mean sacrificing things that we consider essential. And it takes courage to trust that if we do this, we will emerge from our food deserts and be nourished and renewed. Now we know this doesn't just happen in churches, right? This happens in our careers, in our personal lives, in our marriages and partnerships, in our core family units, born and chosen, and with our beloveds. It's happening in our cities, our states, and our nation, causing a lot of hurt. There is so much hunger and irritability. There are so many food deserts. Do you know how bush honeysuckle got here? It's quite a story. When European settlers arrived, they brought the plants, trees, birds, and animals they loved with them. So, for example, the starlings, those speckled birds that fly in those breathtaking swarms that shift and twist and bend, those clouds of birds that you see, they're non-native. They don't belong here. In fact, they aggressively compete with native birds for habitat, and they usually win. Queen Anne's lace, that round white lacy flower you see at the roadsides in late summer, non-native and aggressive. Lilacs, boxwoods, burning bush, mimosa trees, tulips, daffodils, peonies, rose of Sharon, all non-native, some aggressive. The perfect lawns we create, non-native, often aggressive. Eurasian bush honeysuckle arrived in the 1890s as an ornamental bush, and then in the 1960s was used as a soil stabilizer. So you would start seeing it like in that space between the two lines of an interstate. They would plant bush honeysuckle there, and it just exploded. If we choose to be wide awake and anchor ourselves in courageous love, what we have before us is a clear example of how the culture of domination carried by European settlers literally reshaped the North American landscape. Europeans built their empires with an innate sense of entitlement that whatever they saw and liked was there for the taking. And when they came here and saw the unending wilderness, they believed that the land itself should be tamed and civilized, not only by removing the original nations, but by introducing European understandings of natural beauty to the land itself. So this means that Indian removal and the introduction of non-native plants and the way we tend our lawns and our gardens, it is all interconnected in this colonial domination mindset that the earth is there for our taking, that it serves us. And we know where that is getting us, right? The earth is suffocating, and so are we. So in light of this whole domination narrative, Lori and I got to work. I got a chainsaw. I am in love with power tools, just tell you. I love power tools. I am a typical lesbian, I guess, right? So the burning bushes are gone. The Rose of Sharon, gone. And that thick bush honeysuckle, I tried with my little chainsaw, but it was too big for me to do alone, and we had to pay a company to finish the job, and I know we were privileged to be able to do that, but that's what we did. But we're gonna have to treat that area for years. I've had to accept that sometimes you just need to use chemicals. I hate chemicals. It's like you have to do more damage to undo the bigger damage that got you into the food desert in the first place. Our Unitarian Universalist theology pays a lot of attention to the food deserts that we have created. And I'm using that term literally and metaphorically. I'm sure you realize that by now. Our theology is based on the conviction that we live an interconnected web of life. Everything touches everything else. Food deserts happen when we've broken strands of the web. It's like you're on a walk and you run through a spider web on the trail, right? And in the natural world, the spider respins that web over and over, no matter how many times it's broken. In UU theology, we are spiders. We have a deep responsibility to help respin that web too, because we keep breaking the strands. And that's why social justice is a core spiritual practice for us. You can't just have spirituality and be a Unitarian Universalist, because spirituality without action is a hollow faith. It's like eating honeysuckle berries and trying to fly across the Gulf of Mexico. Similarly, action without a spiritual center is devoid of love, and it's love that carries us through the courageous things we are trying to do to make things right. Love for all of life. Let's return to the words by Reverend Sean Dennison that we read this morning. I will love you by being brave. I will walk directly into the eye of every storm. I will love you by being strong. I will lift the weight of 1,000 broken hearts, pull the whole world behind me on a single chain, and break my own shell to grow, tender and new. So here at Eliot, we keep trying to courageously break our own shells to grow tender and new. Our environmental justice team has been converting our grounds to native habitat. Did you know that? We keep taking the next step. We have been witnessing for Black lives on that front lawn for 12 years. 12 years. We have a strong relationship with Meacham Park, a largely African-American community in Kirkwood. And this fall, a big focus for us is voter registration and getting out the vote. Because there's new restrictive legislation here in Missouri that makes it harder to vote, and we want to make sure everyone can vote because the midterms, as always, have incredibly high stakes. So vote, okay? Go out and vote. And in fact, we're having an assembly on voting after coffee hour today, and I encourage you to go. All these things that we're doing, and I've listed just a few, there is much, much more. All the things that we do are connected to each other. Racism is connected to environmentalism, is connected to Black Lives Matter, is connected to immigration justice reform, is connected to voting reform, is connected to reproductive justice. It's all part of the same thing. And we are in all these things in a forest that is on fire. You know, it takes courage to do what we're doing because sometimes it feels like we are that little parrot shaking a few drops of water from her wings to put out a fire. And people ask, oh, how possibly could we make a difference? And I don't have a pat answer for that. We don't usually have pat answers in Unitarian Universalism. But what I do know, I know that the irritability and hunger that we so often feel is calling us beyond the food deserts we have created to new life. And I gotta tell you, my yard has a lot of new life. Right now, the asters are in their full glory. The ironweed, goldenrod, the phlox, the Susans, the coneflowers, the rose verbena, the wild petunias, the coral honeysuckle, all the different kinds of milkweed, rattlesnake master, partridge pea, everything outdid themselves this year, even with the drought and the heat that we had. And next spring, we're planting native bushes around our property, including sumac. If I get hungry and irritated, I just walk out the door for some love, even in the dead of winter when all that's left are dried out stems that provide habitat for insect hibernation. So let's have the courage to pay attention. Oh my gosh, excuse me. Okay, pay attention, that was a sign. Let's have the courage to pay attention to our hunger and to our irritability, okay? Pay attention to it. Because they're showing us the food deserts that are starving us and are asking for our love. I want to close with the words of Reverend Dennison. I will love you by being. I will breathe in and out and cherish the beating of my own heart, pushing back against anything that would suffocate my flame. Amen and blessed be. Our closing hymn has got a bit of energy, so get ready. Right? It's 10:24 when the Spirit says do.
Got to do
music today been exceptional? May the love of the early morning's dawning and the strength of the eternal hills and the peace of the evening's ending and the love of the Spirit be in our hearts until we meet again. Please be seated for the postlude. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. You can join us for coffee. If you're new here, it's right outside those doors. We'd love to meet you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Go in peace.